All right, well, speaking of stupid, let's talk about this very quickly from Newsweek. Marjorie Taylor Greene asks why kids are getting monkeypox if it's an STD. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I didn't grab this story, but earlier, I think this week or late last week, she also tweeted some shit about how what we should do about monkeypox is mock the people that have gotten monkeypox. And we should mock them because, in her view, it was an STD that only gay men got, right? So
right.
And a bunch of right-wing, evil-minded dipshits who have absolutely no understanding of what monkeypox is or epidemiology or empathy for people at all.
And most importantly, the final
or any fucking empathy whatsoever. You know, they are seeking to both politicize, publicize, and then dismiss monkeypox because they feel like it's a scourge that can be isolated to a group of people they've already demonized. No, to be entirely fair to the science, that's not true. There's been about 16,400 cases of monkeypox in the United States, and the majority of them have been found in the primarily gay male population. But I read a real interesting article that suggested very strongly, and I think it was in the Times or the Post, that the gay male population often acts as a sort of epidemiological canary in the coal mine, that unless there is some reason for a disease to stay within a population or demographic, and for monkeypox, there is no reason for it to stay, that it's got to show up somewhere first.
Skin-on-skin contact.
Right.
Yeah.
Things have to show up somewhere first. And if there is some demographic activity which allows things to show up first within the gay male community, and it does, that's a canary in the coal mine situation. It's not a fucking border wall around monkeypox that prevents monkeypox from moving into other areas. So, and it's not a fucking STD. It's just not. No. You can get it from clothing, bedding, linens. You can get it from physical contact with anybody.
It's physical contact.
Right. If I had if I had fucking monkeypox, Cecil, I would give it to you when we record if I like shook your hand or gave you a hug.
Shook my hand.
You know?
Yeah.
Or like,
yeah, it requires, I guess it requires a little more than, from what I was reading initially. Now this is admittedly, it might go over a week and a half ago, but it requires a little more than just touching something someone else touched or something like that. It requires like an actual physical contact, which is why people are getting it when they have sex, because there's extensive physical contact during those times.
I'm surprised it can spread that fast though, like in 1 minute.
Well, maybe that's why Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't know what it is, because the only time she has sex, somebody comes in their hand and throws it at her. They're just like, no, that's it. That's as close as I want to get to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Here's what fucking Greene said. She said, if monkeypox is a sexually transmitted disease, why are kids getting it? And there are two pieces to that I wanted to talk about, because I think that they're both important and they're both insidious. The first is the premise that we already kind of destroyed, right? If it is an STD, well, it's not. Nobody says that this is an STD. It's not labeled an STD by the CDC or the WHO or any medical body whatsoever. In 2003, I don't know if you remember this, Cecil, but in 2003, there was a monkeypox outbreak in the United States, and it was spread from prairie dogs. Do you remember that?
I don't remember prairie dogs being...
Prairie dogs were being kept very briefly in the United States as a sort of like temporarily cool exotic pet.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So prairie dogs were being kept as pets, and prairie dogs are susceptible to monkeypox. And so there was an outbreak of monkeypox where people were getting it from prairie dogs. This happened in 2003. And I actually remember when this happened, because I remember thinking, oh man, a prairie dog would be kind of a cool pet. And then I looked it up and I'm like, actually, that's a horrible pet. And then it's literally, it's a terrible pet. Like, it's terrible. You know, it's a horrible pet. I just thought they were cute. But yeah, like there was a monkeypox outbreak then. It's not a fucking STD. But I think this question is intentionally raised to inflame and promote the Republican fear-mongering bullshit about pedophilia.
Oh, yeah.
And pedophilia's imagined link to the gay community. The Republicans are saying, like, look, who's giving it to all these kids? Hey, we're all going to grant that this is an STD that is just for gay men. So then how are kids getting it? Well, obviously kids are getting fucked by gay men.
Yeah, man. Fucking A,
right?
dude.
That's what she's fucking saying.
A, yeah.
But she doesn't have to come out and say it. All she needs to do is imply it and put that question in the minds of people that have had these similar questions and ideas already implanted.
Well, and her hateful base eats that shit up.
Yum,
They want her to make those veiled claims because it makes her look powerful. It makes her look like she's saying the right things against these groups that they think are lesser and that they hate. And so it's all a benefit for her to say things like this. It's a win-win for her to be provocative in this way. And she's done a very good job, as stupid as she comes off very often. And I don't think she's a very intelligent person, but I do think she's crafty. And I think she understands that she can push certain lines. This last week, she talked about Christian nationalism. Was a thing that she said. She's like, I'm a Christian and I'm a nationalist. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a Christian nationalist. Now, I don't know if you remember, but that guy from fucking Iowa, that Steve King, he said white nationalist and he got fucking he didn't win his seat back, man. They were just like, no, pass, hard pass. Yep. And I think people need to recognize like Christian nationalism is a terrifying fucking thing. They want to incorporate, understand what it is, understand what it means. It means they want to make a theocracy, more of a theocracy than we already have, which we already do have a very deep theocracy, but they want to take it another step. They want like a pope for a king, man. Get the fuck out of here. And I think we need to make sure that people understand. I don't think it's going to change anything about her because I think she comes from a very rural district. It's in Georgia. I don't think it's going to change anything for her in particular.
No.
But you need to make that a bad word so people don't say that kind of shit because, man, the more they say it, the more they're going to push the Overton window over that way.
Yep. She's intentionally using language like nationalism and the right is doing this a lot. They're using that language as a stand-in for patriotism.
Yes.
And by doing that, by shifting that linguistic window, they're shifting the ideological window. And this is the Overton window you referred to. The way that they do that is through the clever-ish use of language. There's a difference between nationalism and patriotism, right? Patriotism for many Americans would be thought of as a virtue. Nationalism, if you look at what it is not just pride in your country, but it's pride in your country to the specific exclusion of the value of other nations.
Right.
That is it. And it's that exclusivity element of nationalism which sets it apart from patriotism. They are not synonymous, although they share a handful of similar elements. But because people believe that their country is a nation, that their nation is something to be proud of, that pride in their nation, it would be nationalism, right? It's easy linguistic shit. And this is games. These are just rhetorical games that people are playing to fuck with people's ideas about how they see the world. Because now, I'm a Christian and I'm a patriot. Why wouldn't I be a Christian nationalist? Well, holy shit. There's like 50 reasons why you might not want to be a Christian fucking nationalist. Right? Because also there, and I don't want to belabor this too much, but also when you combine two words, you now have a new concept.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If I'm a Christian, that's one thing. It's got a definition. If I'm a nationalist, that's one thing. It's got a definition. If I am a Christian nationalist, you now have a new concept, right?
Yep.
But they don't treat it as a new concept that has its own specific definition. What they treat it as is two words that they want specifically to deal with differently. I'm a Christian. What's wrong with being a Christian? Well, okay, nothing's wrong. All right, we'll set that aside. I believe in my country. What's wrong with nationalism? Aren't you a patriot? Well, yeah, I'm a patriot. Okay, well then see no problem with being a Christian nationalist. But that's disingenuous.
Right.
Because it's not dealing with the truth of what that phrase
and that phrase
is defined as.
That's key. That's important. And you're absolutely right. You make a new concept when you glue those things together because when they were apart, they weren't affecting each other. There wasn't like a tie between them. They were two separate concepts. But the moment you put them in the same as a conjunction or whatever, as a fucking phrase, Now you're saying these two things are inextricably linked and they mean something to each other. And that's a dangerous concept.
Yes.
And we should be pushing against that as vociferously as we can, because what I don't want is for that shift to happen where suddenly we're arguing on levels of Christian nationalism.
Right.
Where suddenly we're saying, well, let's just get to the lowest level of Christian nationalism. I want to get it out of our government completely. I know it's not going to happen, but I want to keep pushing the language so that we don't start accepting the fact that there is a government that has a Christian overview. I want to see people twist all these laws that the Supreme Court is laying down now. I want to see people start twisting these laws so they have to allow other religions to do the same thing so that people suddenly realize they fucked up, like the Satanists do all the time when they do this, thing where they're like, yeah, they put up a fucking 10 Commandments, we put up a Baphomet skull. And they're like, oh, sorry about the 10 Commandments, that's our bad. And then they took them down. I want the same thing. I want satanic prayer or something after school that shows that this is, a bad idea for everyone, that no one really wants this. You only want it for Christians. And, but I think we need to keep pushing that, because if we don't, we're going to wind up with, well, at least we're not as Christian nationalists as we could be.
Yeah, and they only want this for Christians, and then they don't even have a settled idea of what Christianity means.
Oh, no.
They don't even have a settled idea. You talk to people about this stuff, and it's like, all right, well, what if you had somebody who was a Moonie? Now the Moonies are Christian, or the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're Christian. They've got some ideas that most of the mainstream Christian population wouldn't ascribe to.
I think Mormons are too, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mormons. Yeah. So there are so many denominations of Christianity which would necessarily conflict. I mean, what if you had a teacher standing in front of your kids saying, all right, well, in our classroom, obviously we're not going to do birthday celebrations or Christmas celebrations because, and started teaching you about Jehovah's Witness stuff? Or what if they started scaring the shit out of your kids about, rapture stuff? Or what if they were a Unitarian? And they started it doesn't work.
I think a valid strategy might be for some atheists and humanists out there that want to change this law to adopt and try to understand Jehovah's Witness principles and use Jehovah's Witness as the thing. Because like you say, it's Christian, so they might start, but then do all the crazy shit that they don't know about, right? Do all that crazy shit, or do it as a Mormon where you're announcing we all get your own fucking planet or whatever when you die, so that there's something that makes everybody in the audience be like, oh, wait a minute, what now? Right. What is that? And it gets them uneasy with hearing about other people's religion, because everybody seems to think that their religion is so everybody's ubiquitous. Everybody has the same ideals. Yep. In fact, I talked to somebody this week who was a Methodist, and I was having a conversation with this Methodist, and we were talking back and forth. And I said, Methodist, isn't that like a really sort of liberal group of people? And she's like, there's a very progressive wing that I belong to. And she's like, but Jeff Sessions is a Methodist. She said, it can be, so even in their own church,
right,
even in your own sub-church, right? It's a Protestant religion. Even in your own Protestant subsect, there can be highly liberal and highly conservative wings. The Catholic Church has a highly liberal and a highly conservative wing. Like the conservative wing is anti-immigration. The conservative wing is a full-on, no abortion. And then there's a liberal wing that is pro-choice and pro-immigration. You know what I mean? So there's big, when you get a group that's big enough, even the church doesn't agree with itself.
Right. Yeah. The Methodist is an interesting example because I think, if I'm not mistaken, but I see articles all the time that there is a straight up schism taking place in the Methodist Church right now around the issue of gay marriage. Yeah. And whether or not, some churches have said, yeah, we're 100% pro, and other churches have said we're 100% not. And there is a straight up split the church in half schism just in that one fucking niche of a niche of a niche. It's fucking nuts. It was interesting, Cecil, because we sent, as you know, and I talked about this on the show, we sent my stepdaughter to a Lutheran school for the last 2 years because of the pandemic. So we needed her to go in person for a bunch of reasons. So we sent her to a Lutheran school as the only option. And then, come to find out, and I Googled around that there are different sects within the Lutheran denomination. And we had sent her to the one that was part of this like Missouri Synod or Synod, I don't know how it's pronounced. And that is actually like a really, really, really conservative version of Lutheranism. And I had been familiar before we signed up with a much more liberal version of Lutheranism. And so this church ended up being quite conservative, like very conservative. And I was struck like, wow, this doesn't seem in keeping with the Lutheranisms that I've been exposed to. And I looked it up and it's like, oh, it's because they're part of this chunk, right? This carve out or whatever. So it's nobody wants this. It would be interesting, Cecil, if atheists pursued within science classes, and I don't know that like I would want anyone to do this, but like if kids started fucking flunking AP exams and like not exiting school with the proper knowledge. I don't want this. I don't want them to be hurt, right? The whole idea is not to hurt students, but it's like at some point, isn't it going to?
Oh yeah.
Aren't they going to leave school with like bad ideas or lesser ideas or fucked up ideas about how the world operates?
This is a tangent, but this week I read a story out from Florida that if you're like a veteran, you can get a waiver to teach class in like schools there.
Yeah, man.
Did you see this?
Yes, I read the same. This is fucking nuts. Like,
yeah,
Florida's so out of teachers that it's like
just like, yeah, they're just like, yeah, we'll just take a veteran. It doesn't matter what you are trained in. You can just do like a little bit of like I think it was a certain number of hours that they could do, and then they could. And I know I saw a story circulating that somebody said that you could do it if you were a veteran's wife or a spouse, but from what I read, that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah, you can get a waiver for some fees. You can get a
waiver for fees, but you still have to do the schooling or something. But if you're a vet, I think they waive the schooling.
Yeah, if you're a vet, you don't have to have a degree in your subject area of expertise. So like when I went to school to teach, because that's what I went to school for. So you had to I wanted to teach high school English, and I was going to be certified 6 through 12 because it's just more marketable. So, but you had to get your degree in your subject area. So you had to get like a bachelor's degree in my case, English literature. And then you had to get a minor in secondary education. And then you had to do a bunch of practicum work. So you had to do a bunch of like clinical hours of, observation and then like teaching, like student teaching, but also you had to do some stuff in between observation and student teaching. I forgot what they called it. And then you get a license, and then you were licensed for a certain thing. And so what Florida's saying is like, yeah, but if you're a veteran, you don't have to do that stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's the outlines. A minimum of 48 months military service with an honorable or medical discharge, a minimum of 60 college credits with a 2.5 grade point average. So that 60 college credits, I don't think that gets you a degree. I thought you had to be like in the 90s or something like that for a degree. So I don't think that gets you a degree as I recall, but I could be wrong. I have no idea. Passing, and then you have to pass on a Florida subject area examination for bachelor's level subjects. You have to have a passing score on that. And then there you go.
Yeah.
So you have to have that's what so you just have to test well. You just have to test well. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, to be a teacher, at least in Illinois, it's kind of a high bar. It is a pain in the ass. Like the educational requirements, the practicum, the clinical hours, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more than just I tested into my subject area.
Yeah.
Holy shit. What the fuck difference does being a veteran make? Like literally, nothing. What in the world difference does that? Why should that be? If you're qualified to teach because you can take a test, what the fuck difference does it make if you're a goddamn veteran or not? This is like God, when I read that story, Cecil, it's like such a fucking obvious right-wing pander.
It is, totally.
Nothing in the world. That's all it is. gargle fucking troop cum. That's all this is.
But what you're doing is you're making a dumber United States populace
For
over
sure.
and over and over again. And we've been going down this road since I was a kid, man. They've been trying to change how we teach kids stuff. And it's been going on for a very long time. And teachers are the front line very often of, these battles, and I don't want to call it a culture war because it's not a culture war. It's an education war. It's a war on whether or not we're going to tell people reality or not. And that's been happening in the schools for over 2 decades now, where, they're fighting on whether or not they're going to have intelligent design added to the books. I talked to a teacher. I know he's a high school teacher, a history teacher. And he basically said there's 2 makers of textbooks. Either you get the Texas one, you get the California one. Those are your 2 options. And so, they're not teaching the California one in half the states, over half the states. And, the Texas one is probably almost certainly omitting a bunch of stuff or changing history or making people feel good about slavery and other things.
Yeah.
Those people aren't getting a good, solid education in those places. No. And then, compound that with the idea that we use property taxes as a vehicle to fund schools in our area, which then perpetuates cycles of poverty and wealth. And it's just a fucking stupid system.
Then
we throw political wrenches in it like fucking hand grenades.
Yep. And nobody is doing this more than Florida. No state.
Nobody.
DeSantis is so fucking heavily involved. There was another story I saw just like last week, or maybe this week, I don't even know anymore. There was a public school, elementary school, that had to pull all the books from their classroom libraries because they needed to be reviewed to make sure that they didn't have content that violated the new Florida restrictions on, anything that had gender or sexual identity.
Yeah, man.
Anywhere in it. And it makes no sense, right? Like what book does not have gender and sexual identity in it? Like literally what book?
Yeah.
What book does not have gender?
There goes Little Women.
There goes everything where there's characters, right?
I know.
If there are characters that interact.
Like an agender fucking robot or something.
Right. Which they wouldn't want either, right? Like any interaction is like all interactions are in some way, and without a lot of reading into, gendered interactions. Like if I mention in a book that I am a father or a son or a mother or a brother, all of those are gendered terms. If I can't mention I can't have characters that are related to one another or married or dating or going to a dance with another person. Like you can't have a story of human beings. What the fuck? How in the world? But they're not really trying to police. And that's why it's so absurd, right? They're not really trying to police mentions of gender and sexual identity. They're trying to police mentions of gender and sexual identities, which they deem to be unacceptable to the right.
The others.
Yep.
If you don't fall into the I or the O, then you're out.